Alright, so magandang araw sa ating lahat, and then proceed na tayo dito sa panibago nating topic, which is all about the Mendelian Genetics. And then sa word na genetics, it deals with the study of the heredity, trait, and then variations, no? So dito natin malalaman kung ano-ano ba yung mga bagay na kung saan minana natin sa ating mga nanay or tatay, or sa mga ano natin, sa mga yun nga, sa parent natin, no, kung ano yung mga differences natin or kung ano yung similarities natin sa kanila, either both our nanay and then tatay, di ba? And then usually from the word itself, heredity is the transmission of genes from one generation to the next generation. Ano yung may papasa mong or may papasa mong gene, no, or yung sabihin natin yung trait, no, it's either physical characteristics na nakakita sa ating panlabas na anyo, di ba? And then it's either namana natin yung ating ilong, yung kulay ng ating mga mata, or yung characteristic ng ating mga mata, and then yung sa characteristic ng ating buhok, and so forth, no? So anyway, mag-proceed tayo sa susunod, which is yung genes. Genes are DNA molecules that determines the traits of an organism. So based on our previous lesson, sa isang cell, no, according to its internal structure, makikita natin dito yung chromosome, and then sa loob ng chromosome meron tayong mga DNA strands, di ba? Which contains of double helical strand na tinatawag natin na deoxyribonucleic acid. Yan po yun. And then sa loob ng DNA molecule, nasa loob po ng mga genes. Ito yung mga sections of strands na naandun sa mga nandun sa particular na DNA. And then yun, no? And then next po yung variation. Yung variation is the differences among the individuals in a species or differences of species among the population. No, maaring tayo yung magkakaroon ng pagkakaiba-iba, di ba? Pagdating dun sa particular nating characteristics, pati isa lang yung ating lahi, no, or yung species, di ba? And then usually, kaya ko lang naman sinabi ito, no, yung differences among individual. Lahat naman talaga tayo, meron tayong individual differences, di ba po? According to our physical characteristic or our emotional trait or behavioral trait, and so forth, di ba po? And then we have three branches of genetics, no? So yung una, which is the classical or Mendelian Genetics, so it discusses the basic laws of inheritance and published by Gregor Mendel in 1866 to explain the statistical results he obtained from experimenting a garden piece, or sabihin natin na ito ay isang, or yung kanyang scientific name ay Pisum sativum. Yan po yun, tatandaan po natin yung scientific name ng garden piece, which is the Pisum sativum. At malalaman natin dito later on yung statistical results na tinest ni Gregor Mendel that time, no? At ito yung basic foundation din ng genetics, di ba po? And then sa molecular genetics, it deals with the formation, structure, and function of macromolecules essential to life and their role in cell replication and transmission of genetic information. It also involves the information revolution arising from the discovery of recombinant DNA techniques and technologies involving DNA. So sa molecular genetics, kakaibat rin dito yung study ng molecular biology, na kung saan medyo malalim at intensive study ng genetics, na kung saan ina-apply na rin dito yung genetic engineering, no? And then next po yung evolutionary or population genetics, no? So it aims to account for evolution in terms of changes in genes and genotype frequencies within population, and the process that convert the variation with the population into more or less permanent variation between the species. And then meron tayong equation na ginagamit dito na tinatawag natin na Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, no? Yung p squared plus 2pq plus q squared is equals to 1. Dapat yung magiging final answer niya, dapat magtatali siya into 1, no? Sa ngayon, kahit gusto ko mga ipakita sa inyo yung mga sample problems regarding po dito sa population genetics by applying Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, hindi ko po siya may papakita within this time. Focus muna tayo sa mga basics, no? Then muna tayo sa Mendelian Genetics, which is ayun yung focus ng ating lesson po. So, mapunta muna tayo kay Gregor Mendel. So, he is an Austrian monk, and then he is considered as the father of genetics, or some in other textbooks, sinasabi na siya ay father of classical genetics. And then his contribution is for presenting experiments about the nature of inheritance by using the gardening peas as his main specimen, no? And then when Mendel did this experiment, he started with purebred peas, meaning if the peas were allowed to self-pollinate, they would produce offspring identical to themselves. One group of plant produced tall plants only, while another group produced only wrinkled seeds. These plants were his basis for his study. And then sa Mendelian Genetics, no, Mendel studied 7 characteristics in a garden pea, which occurred into 2 contrasting traits, no, in terms of flower color, no, contrasting yung kanyang traits, no, in terms of purple and then white, no. Then according to its flower position along the stem, either axial or terminal. You see seed or pea color, it's either yellow or green. Then you see texture or shape, it's either round or wrinkled. And then next po, yung pod color, it's either green or yellow. And then yung pod appearance or shape, it's either inflated or constricted. And then yung plant height, no, or plant elevation in other textbook, yun ang term nila, it's either tall or short, or tall or dwarf, no. Ganun po yung contrasting traits nila. And then somehow, ito po yung differences nila. It's either yung contrasting trait nila, depende na lamang po kung ito po ay dominant or recessive trait. Malalaman po natin dyan later on kung ano po yung pinagkaiba ng dominant at saka recessive trait, maliban po sa spelling, no? And then, ito pa po isa. Then, yan po. No, balikan lang natin, no, yung central dogma ng molecular genetics. Kumbaga siningit ko lang siya para mas madaanan lang natin para magkaroon lang kayo ng brief information regarding this. And then sa central dogma, nagsisimula yung DNA, proceed to the RNA through the process of transcription, no? And then yung RNA down to the protein, no, pero may ibang textbook na nababasa, RNA, nagpo-proceed na daw kagad siya into amino acids. But nag-start muna ako dun sa macromolecule na tinatawag natin na protein. No, yung RNA down to protein through the process of translation. Yun po yun, di ba po? And then, from biggest to smallest, ayan, naipakita ko naman na ito last lesson. And then, we must define some of the terms, no, para mas maging familiarize tayo sa mga sa mga concepts na ating dadaanin. And then sa genes, no, it is the DNA molecules or information carried by each individual organisms which determines their visible traits, no, katulad ng sinabi ko po kanina. And then yung dominant genes, it is the gene or factor that dominate another gene. The resulting trait is called the dominant trait. And then the dominant gene is written with a capital letter. So, ito pong dalawang capital letter T, it signifies the tall trait, no? And then, ito po isang example ng dominant gene, di ba po? And then, itong small capital letter T, no? Makita natin dito na hindi siya yun nga, no, may makikita kagad tayo dito na dominant gene is written with a capital letter. Nakita natin na ito is small letter at hindi natin ito basta-basta may considered as dominant gene, no. Ito ay tinatawag natin na recessive genes, no, which is maliit po siya. Malalaman natin siya later on. And then, what about this, no? May capital letter T and then small capital letter T. So, saan natin siya i-determine, no? It's either sa dominant gene ba or sa recessive gene, no? Okay po. So, i-determine natin siya as dominant gene. Magiging dominant yung gene natin sa ganitong scenario. Kapag may nakita tayong letter T na malaki dito, it is already considered as dominant trait. Dominant gene or dominant trait, that because meron na siyang taglay na dominant gene kasi kaya niya ma-dominate yung mismong recessive gene or recessive allele na naandito, which is yung small. Kayang-kaya niya ma-dominate, no, yung mismong yung mismong particular gene or yung trait niya. And then dito naman sa recessive genes, it is the gene or factor that dominate by dominant gene. As it is masked or dominated, it is not expressed as a visible traits. However, if the individual carries both recessive genes, then the recessive trait is expressed. It is expressed with a small letter, katulad po ng pinakita ko po dito kanina. So ayan po yun. Ito pa isang example ng recessive gene. No? And then, in terms of alleles, it is the gene, or they are the genes that are found in the same loci, no, or place, no, of homologous chromosomes. It is alternative forms of a single genes. So yung isang letter T na naandito, yan, yung capital letter T, isa siyang example ng allele, no, or alleles. No. And then, homozygous gene, no? Genes that are morphologically alike with each other. Kapag sinabi natin homozygous, magkakaparehas yung kanyang allele. No? It's either parehas silang malaking capital letter T, and then malaki yung letra ng kanilang T, and then maliit yung kanilang letrang T. No? Magkakaparehas, no? Yung kanyang alleles. No? And then yung heterozygous genes, they are morphologically different just like this. No? But they are dominant gene. No, kahit heterozygous pa sila, no? Baka may magtanong na, sir, okay lang po ba kahit mauna po yung letter T po dito, at saka yung sa second letter po ng allele is capital letter T? What I mean is, sa una maliit and then malaki yung letter dito sa pangalawa. Actually, mamamali po agad kayo doon, no? Kailangan mas dominated yung mismong nauna kumpara sa pangalawa. No? I hope na nag-gets nyo naman na siya. And then, in terms of genotype, so it is the genetic makeup or composition of a particular trait. It's like, for example, 50% no, ng tall organism, yan, or tall flower, no, 50%. No? And then, yun yung kanyang genetic makeup in terms of, parang ano na rin siya, hindi siya ratio, but yung percentage ng mismong genetic makeup na nakita natin through the use of test cross na malalaman natin later on. And then yung phenotype, it is the appearance or characteristics of an organism which is determined by genotype. Example, 50% na capital letter T, both alleles, which signifies the tall flower. Yung tall flower na ito yung isang example ng phenotype. Yun po yun. So, in terms of genome, it is the totality of all genotypes for all the traits of an organism. And then yung gene pool, it is the sum total of all genotypes of all individuals in a given population. This is the genetic composition among the species. So, ayun po yun. And then yung gene pool, kadalasan, ina-apply to through the study of ecology, and then yung population genetics. And then, sunod po dito yung filial generation. Filial generation, it is the offspring of a genetically specified mating. And then yung first filial generation or F1 generation, the offspring of parents of contrasting genotypes. And then yung second filial generation or F2 generation, it is the offspring of two F1 individuals. So remember, the offspring in succeeding generations of continued inbreeding of first filial generation descendants. Ayan po. So meron tayong 4 laws of inheritance, no? And then, some other textbooks, ginagawa siyang 3, pero ginawa ko nilang inapat ko siya. Para mas maano natin, ma-dive in natin isa-isa. And then, in terms of unit factors in pairs, in terms of alleles, the genetic characters are controlled by unit factors that exist in pairs by individual organism. So, sa isang organism, dapat nag-exist or nag-exhibit dapat yung ganito. Yan, ganyan. Yung ganyang klaseng genetic makeup or composition niya. Ganyan dapat ang magiging taglay niya. Then, in terms of complete dominance, it states that the cross between homozygous dominant genes and homozygous recessive genes will result to a progeny of heterozygous genes, will not determining all dominant genes. And then, the term dominant and recessive are also used to designate particular traits, no? And then, example, tall stems are dominant and dwarf stems are recessive. Katulad po na sinabi ko kanina. And then, kapag sinabi, ulitin ko, ang dominant, yan po yung tall stem. Kasi, malaki siya eh. Dominant nga siya, di ba? Mas malaki siya, mas superior siya. Kaysa naman sa recessive na maliit lang siya, just like yung dwarf stem. And then, bago tayo malipat sa kabilang slide, I just want to explain the progeny. ito po yung descendant, no, ng ng mismong particular offspring, no. Then next po, in terms of segregation, it states that all the genes for all the traits of an organism are equally divided and distributed in all resulting gametes, no? Or yung gametes na tinutukoy natin, yun po yung mga sex cells, no? Just like yung sperm cell and then yung egg cell. Yun po yung tinutukoy doon na gametes, no? Ginagamit natin yung termino na to, ulitin ko lang po para po malabelan natin ng mas maayos, no, yung mismong sex cells. Kasi in reality, kapag narinig ng estudyante yung mga sex cells, medyo, yun nga, ganadong-ganado, medyo, tapos maraming mga green-minded, no, pag nakakarinig lang ng ganong salita, parang first time na nakarinig. Kaya mas appropriate na lang na gamitin yung gamit sa ganong bagay. No? And then, each individual carries 2 hereditary alleles that affect any given character or trait. Now, 2 alleles become segregated from each other when the number of these chromosomes are reduced from diploid to haploid. No? And then, lastly, yung independent assortment, it states that the alleles of different genes are randomly distributed to the gametes and fertilization occurs at random. No? So, yun po yung 4 na laws. No? Ano yung 4 na laws na yun? Ito po yung 4 na laws of inheritance na na-formulate ni Gregor Mendel. Then, how to use a test cross, no? So, ito na nga po alamin natin. So, una, no, gagawin muna natin yung mga basics. Draw a 2x2 square, no, nakikita ninyo. Draw a box and divide it into 4 smaller squares, no? Make it sure na medyo lakihan nyo lang siya ng konti kasi may mga isusulat kayo dyan. Huwag nyo masyadong liitan, no? So, leave room above the box and to its left so you can label it. And then next po, name the alleles involved, no? Parang ginagawa natin to last time, no, na parang gumagawa tayo ng GRESA method na kumbaga gagawa lang tayo ng given para mas organized, no? Kasi meron ako mga word problems na ibibigay later on, kailangan natin siyang i-organize ng mas maayos at mas malinaw, no? Then, for example, call the dominant gene of black 4, which is the capital F, and the recessive gene for yellow 4, which means the small letter f. If you don't know which gene is dominant, use different letters for the 2 alleles, no? Pero, nire-recommend ko na sa inyo, same letter na lang po. At saka, please po, be careful po tayo at maging aware tayo sa mga sinusulat nating letra, no? Lalo na kapag letter T, letter C, or letter V as in victory, minsan nagkakamali tayo sa mga sulat eh. Di ba po? Minsan yung small letter V natin napapagkamalang malaki tuwad sa nasusulat natin. Next po, check the parents' genotypes, no? Gagawa na tayo ng genotypes, no? Kumbaga dito kanina gumawa tayo ng allele, which is the single pair. Dito naman, dedetermine na natin kung ito ba ay heterozygous, homozygous dominant, and then homozygous recessive. Alam naman natin yung differences nila, no? So heterozygous means it has 2 different alleles, no? Which is the capital F and then small f. And then yung homozygous dominant means that means it has 2 copies of the dominant allele. Dominant allele, so ibig sabihin malalaking letra yun. So homozygous recessive, it means that it has 2 copies of the recessive allele, which is the small letter f. So any parent that shows the recessive trait has yellow 4 belongs to this category. So number 4, label the rows with 1 parent's genotype. For example, the female bear is heterozygous. Write an F to the left of the first row and an F to the left of the second row, no? Okay, so number 5, label the rows with 1 parent's genotype, no? And then number 6, have each box inherit letters from its row and column. So the top right box inherits an F or capital F from the mother and F or small f from the father to make heterozygous gene, no? Just like yung capital F and then small f. The bottom left box inherits an F or small f from both parents to make the small letter f. The bottom right box inherits an f from both parents to make small letter f. So another note, if you end up with both type of allele, it's customary to write the dominant allele first. So write this. Yan po. Unahin muna natin yung dominant f and then yung recessive f. Hindi po ganito, mamamali po agad kayo dyan, no? Kumbaga, ito na yung naging rule natin from the customary customary rules na nakikita natin sa test cross. And then, number 7, interpret the Punnett square. In our example, we have two boxes of heterozygous gene. So 25% plus 25% is equals to 50%. So each offspring has a 50% chance of inheriting the heterozygous gene or heterozygous allele combination. The other two boxes are each homozygous recessive F. So each child has a 50% of inheriting the small letter F or homozygous recessive gene. So the next naman po, by describing the phenotype in this example, there are two squares with at least one capital F, so each offspring has a 50% chance to have black fur. So there are two squares with small letter F, so each offspring has 50% chance to have yellow fur. Read the problem carefully for more information about the phenotype. Many genes are more complex than this example. For example, a flower species might be red when it has the homozygous dominant R alleles, white when it has small letter R, or pink when it has capital R and then small r, which are the heterozygous dominant, and then in cases like this, the dominant allele is then referred to as an incomplete dominant allele, ganyan na po siya. So nakita natin dito sa result na yung heterozygous dominant gene, which means mayroon siyang taglay na 50% na black fur, and then yung homozygous recessive na allele or gene na pala yun, and then yun yung 50% na meron siyang taglay na yellow fur. Yan po. So mag-proceed na tayo sa sample problems in test cross. So meron tayong tatlong test cross, which are the monohybrid cross, which contains 2x2 box with a product of 4 boxes, dihybrid cross, which contains 4x4 boxes, and then meron siyang 16 boxes in total, and then yung trihybrid cross, meron tayong 8x8 boxes in a total of 64 boxes. So ang gagawin na natin is ito lang pong dalawa. Yan lang po dalawa, monohybrid at saka dihybrid cross. Yung trihybrid, hindi po natin siya gagawin ngayon kasi mahirap po yan, And then, sa monohybrid cross, dalawang alleles na po yung kailangan. Dito naman po, 4 na alleles sa isang box. Dito naman po, sa totoo lang, since 8x8 siya, kailangan natin ipunan within 9 alleles, sa isang, I think it's 9 alleles sa isang box. Kaya medyo marami siya. And then, alright, so sample problem number 1. So in human beings, a downward pointed frontal hairline, which is the widow's peak, not widow's peak, but widow's peak, is a heritable trait or namamana. A person with a widow's peak always has at least one parent who also has this trait, whereas persons with straight frontal hairline may occur in families in which one or even both parents have widow's peak. When both parents have a straight frontal hairline, all children also have a straight hairline. Using the capital letter W and small letter w to symbolize genes for this trait. So what is the genotype of an individual without widow's peak? So alamin natin yung kanilang parental gametes, parental genotype, genotypic ratio, and then phenotypic ratio. Okay, so proceed tayo sa whiteboard. So ayan na po, nandito na po tayo sa ating whiteboard, and then proceed na tayo dito sa parental gametes. But bago yon, gagawa muna tayo ng given. Kailangan natin ma-discover muna dito yung kanilang mga alleles. So alin yung mga alleles na tinutukoy ko dito? So yung mga alleles na yan is yung capital, I'm sorry about this, capital letter W and then small letter w. Magbibigay po ako ng note na yan nga, be careful sa pagsusulat ng letra. Yan po yung tatandaan natin. Yan po be careful sa pagsusulat ng letra. Yan po yung note na yan. And then, yung capital letter W, it stands for the widow's peak. Yan po yung characteristics niya. And then yung small letter W naman, it is the straight frontal hairline. Yan po, sulat ko na rin po. Straight frontal hairline. Pwede ko na pong burahin yung note. Yan po. Yan po. And then, yung kanilang parental gametes, no? Yan. Parental gametes. Yung father and then mother, no? Kasi gametes yan, tinutukoy natin dito, di ba? So, we must determine the father's trait and then mother's trait. So, katulad ng sinabi din sa word problem, mas nag-exist talaga yung straight frontal hairline nila. And then, dito naman is parehas pong maliliit yan. Yan po, no? So, yan po yung kanilang parental gametes, and then somehow yung kanilang parental genotype is sa father, then sa mother. Ganun lang din naman eh. It contains straight frontal hairline, no? And then genotype nila is ito po, WW multiplied by WW. Parehas pong maliliit yan. No, para yan pa, para mas madali nyo matandaan. And then through their testing in the parental genotype, kailangan natin silang i-test through testros. Medyo pagpasensyahan nyo na yung pagdodrawing ko ng box. Yan, okay po. And then ilalagay natin dito, since parehas na naman silang small w, ilalagay ko na rin dito yung father's trait at saka sa mother's trait, no? So, and then apply natin yung rule. Then parehas na naman silang double na maliit. Yan. Ayan, naisulat na natin lahat. No, so lalagyan ko na lang siya ng initial na SFH, no? Bakit SFH? Ano yung ibig sabihin ng SFH? Ang SFH na tinutukoy ko dito is yung straight frontal hairline, no? Yan po yun. So, ang kanilang genotypic ratio is nakita natin na 100%, no? 100% yung kanyang WW, no? And then yung kanilang phenotypic ratio, no? Since 100% ito, nakita natin na 100% din ang kanyang W. Kaya burin ko yung equal. Yan. Yung WW na yan, so ibig sabihin 100% ang kanyang straight frontal hairline. No. So ayan na po yung kanyang phenotypic ratio, or should I say percentage lang po na ipakita ko po dito. So yung ratio talaga niya is 4:0, no? Parehas na rin po yun. But pwede rin naman natin siyang gawing 1:0, di ba? Or 1:0, no? Para hindi po kayo maguluhan. So ayun po yung kanilang genotypic and then phenotypic ratio. I hope na nagets nyo po. And then next problem, so sample problem number 2. In human, brown eyes are dominant over blue eyes. So what type of an offspring would you expect if you crossed a heterozygous brown-eyed person? So alamin natin yung kanyang parental gametes, parental genotype, genotypic ratio, and then phenotypic ratio. Okay, so at this time, punta ulit tayo sa whiteboard. So ang kanyang mga alleles, capital letter B at saka small letter b. Yung capital letter B, ito po yung brown eyes. And then yung capital letter B, ito po yung blue eyes. Teka, purin ko lang. Yan po. So, mag-start na po tayo sa parental gametes. No, so sa parental gametes, dito natin nakita yung sa male tsaka sa female. No? So sa male, nag-exist dito yung heterozygous gene, no? Pati rin sa female, ganun din yung nangyari. Di ba po? Kasi nakita natin dito sa human, brown eyes are dominant over the blue eyes, di ba po? And then heterozygous brown-eyed person. Ito po ay isang heterozygous dahil magkaiba po dahil morphologically different yung kanilang alleles, di ba po? And then somehow, ang kanilang relationship with that is ganyan na po. So yung parental genotype naman, burahin ko muna. Genotype. In terms of sa male, medyo i-rewrite lang natin siya. Then sa female is ganyan ulit. And then gagawa tayo ng Punnett square ulit or test cross using monohybrid ulit. Medyo malaki yung nasa side na ito. So sa male, no, parehas lang naman siya, so sulat na lang din natin. Ganyan po yung separation ng allele sa bawat sides ng mismong box. Ganyan lang po yung gagawin natin. Then somehow, magkaparehas, i-test cross na natin sila. Parehas na capital letter B. Ayan po. Then, malaki yung B, and then small letter B lang to. Unahin natin yung malaki, yung dominant na B, tsaka yung recessive na B. And then, next po, yung capital letter B, and then plus, dagdag natin yung small letter B. Ganyan po yung mangyayari. And then, parehas naman siyang small letter B sa side na ito. So, yan po. So, nahanap na natin yung genotypic trait nila sa bawat boxes na nandito. And then, kailangan natin ma-determine natin yung mga phenotypic traits nila. So, yung BB na yan, or yung capital letter B na yan, or homozygous dominant na yan, which means brown eyes. Brown na lang susulat ko. As well as, parehas na rin brown dito. Kasi mas dominant eh. Mas nakita natin na dominant yung kanilang gene. And then, dito naman sa small letter B, blue. Nag-iisa lang yung blue eyes dito sa part na ito. And then sa genotypic ratio, yan. We must pick it that the homozygous dominant gene, no, is 1/4 or 25%. Yan po. And then yung heterozygous dominant is 2/4, no. I think it is not the, parang tingin ko nga 2/4 nga, no? Pwede rin naman 2/4 or pwede rin naman 1/2, no? Okay na rin yan, pero ang ano dito is 50%. Kasi dalawa, di ba? Kung hatiin natin sila sa percentage into 100%, and then yung homozygous recessive naman is iisa lang din, so 25%. So yung kanilang genotypic ratio is 1:2:1. Yan po yung kanilang genotypic ratio. And then yung phenotypic ratio naman, dito nag-exist, no, yung ng brown eyes ay may taglay na 75%. Bakit po 75%? Etong dalawang to ay nag-exhibit ng brown eye trait. And then etong natitira is blue eye. No? Then yung blue eye na nakikita natin is 25% only. So with a phenotypic ratio of, kaya lang hatiin ko lang, meron tayong phenotypic ratio na 3:1. So ayan na po yung kanyang phenotypic ratio. Yan po yun. Yan, nandito na tayo sa last part. So 5 seconds, hinga muna tayo, and then proceed tayo sa last sample problem. Okay, so nandito na tayo sa last part ng ating sample problem, no, which is mag-focus na tayo sa dihybrid cross. Medyo mahirap to, but iisa lang yung ginawa kong word problem related dito. So basahin po muna natin yung word problem. So in a Siamese fighting fishes, blue tail, which means the capital letter B, and the veil tail, which is the capital letter V, are the dominant traits, and the black tail, which is the small letter B, and then the crown tail, which is the small letter V, are the recessive trait. So, kailangan natin gumawa ng test cross para sa parental genotype na yan, no? Then, dating gawin, isulat natin ulit, no? So, let's go to the whiteboard. Medyo mahaba lang siya. So, isusulat natin yung mga alleles. So yung mga alleles dito is yung B. Be careful nga pala sa pagsusulat ng letra. Lalo na sa pagsulat ng letter V. Yan po, yung capital letter V, yan po yung veil tail. And then yung small letter V, ito po yung, or recessive trait niya sa letter V is crown tail. Yan po, yun natatandaan po natin. And then, in terms of parental gametes, no? So, ayan. So, meron tayong given gamit, no? Which is, nandun sa situation. Paano natin gagawin ito? No? Ang gagawin natin is dihybrid cross na. No? Papakita ko dito. Dito sa site na ito, kailangan natin gumamit ng foil method. Foil method. Na-explain ko yun. In mathematics, alam niyo naman ang ibig sabihin ng foil, no? Which means the first term, outer term, inner term, inner yun, inner. And then, yung L stands for the last term. So, ayan po yun, no? Tandaan po natin yan. And then, unahin muna natin tong side na ito. Yan. Yung first term, ayan po. Yan, iba-ibahin natin yung paggamit ng kulay. First term, and then yung last term, teka lang. Ayan. And then, teka lang ganun na rin yung gagawin natin dito sa kabila. Yun yung mga first term. Then last term. Yan. And then yung kanyang inner term, I hope na nasusunod. Yan yung kanyang inner term, and then yung last one is yung kanyang last term. No, ayan. Which means ito. And then, I hope na nasundan nyo siya. And then, lagay na natin yung mismong na-formulate natin na foil, na-formulate natin mga gametes. I think gametes or allele or gene. No? And then, sulat ko na po. Ayan, no? Ganyan na po yung nangyari sa kanya. Okay, so, ang gagawin natin, burahin natin to. So, proceed na tayo sa parental genotype. Dito ko nilalagay yung parental genotype. So, sa parental genotype, ganito yung mangyayari dyan. So, BV, puro BV. Yan. Be careful sa pagsusulat ng letra. And then, ganyan yung mangyayari. Pasensya na po, medyo tabingi. And then, ang gagawin natin dyan is, gagawa na tayo ng 4x4 box. So, ang gagawin natin dyan, buburahin po natin yan lahat. At para mailagay natin lahat ng mismong mga genes na naandito. So, kailangan natin burahin within 5 seconds. And then, susulat ko na dito sa taas yung mga given gametes. No? So, watch out. Okay, so tandaan natin, ilagay na natin at i-test cross na natin yung mga given alleles na naandito. So, unahin dapat natin yung pinakauna, which is letter B dapat, bago yung letter V. Just like this. Panoorin nyo na lang. So, ayan na po, no, naisulat na natin lahat ng mga gamits na naandito. And then, at the same time, maglalagay lang tayo ng palatandaan katulad nung kanina. Medyo tabi niya ako magsulat. Yan, nilalagyan natin sila ng palatandaan ulit, no? Yan, para mas madali natin siya matandaan. And then, dito, isusulat na natin lahat yung kanilang physical characteristic traits, no? So, tandaan natin yung mga homozygous, heterozygous, ganyan-ganyan, at kung ano yung mga dapat natin i-consider na traits in terms of dominant and recessiveness. So, susulat ko na po. Hindi ko na po isusulat yung tail, ha? Blue veil na lang, mga ganun-ganon. So, ayun na po. Naisulat na rin po natin yung kanilang mga characteristics. So, buburin ko po muna ito para ma-determine natin yung kanilang mga genotypic traits. So, isusulat ko dito yung genotypic trait. Ratio nila. So, medyo magiging mahaba lang ito. Iisa-isahin natin yung kanilang genotypic trait, no? In terms of yan, ito mga to, yan. Pero mamaya na natin sila anuhin. So, itong BBVV na malalaki, sulat natin. The next, okay na ito. Checkan natin, lagyan natin ng mark as a proof na nadaanan na natin at naisulat na natin. Kasi itatali-tali natin para makita natin yung ratio. Yan, and then next po. And okay na siya. So, pares na silang 1. Itatali-tali natin. And then, ito, yung BBVV, similar lang din sila nito. So, dalawa na. And then, yung BB, and then VV na maliliit. BBVV na ito is nandito siya. And then, itong part na ito. Be careful po sa pagsusulat ng letra, specifically sa letter V, no? And then, itong BB, VV na ito, similar lang din siya nun. So, yan. And then, yung BB, VV na ito. Daming BB, VV na yan. So, ito ay similar lang din siya nun sa part na yan. And then, dito naman yung BB, VV. Isa lang ang meron. And then, itong part na ito. And then, ito, BB, VV na ito. Pareho silang heterozygous. So, ito ay kabilang dito. 4 na sila. And then, itong part na ito, yung PV, yan po. And then, dito naman, similar lang din siya noon dito dito sa part na ito. I know, I'm sorry. Mali ako ng label. Yan. And then yung last part, which is ito. So, iisa. So, ang kanilang genotypic ratio is ito. Susulat ko na lang dito. So, 1:2, 2:2, 2:4, 1:2, 2:1:2:1, no? So, i-check natin. Yan yun, no? So, kailangan natin i-confirm na ito ay talaga 16. So, 2 plus 2, 4, plus 1, 5, plus 4, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and then 16. So, ito po yung kanilang genotypic ratio. Yan na po. And then, last one, yung kanilang phenotypic ratio. So, medyo ibahin ko lang siya ng konti. Phenotypic ratio nila. Burahin ko na rin po ito. Yan po, yung kanilang phenotypic ratio. In terms of blue veil tail, sulat ko na lang dito. Blue veil tail, and then blue crown tail, and then black veil tail, and then last one, yung black crown tail. No, so ilan ang blue veil tail natin? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, blue veil. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Meron lang akong error dito. Itong part na yun, hindi pala siya veil. Kaya ako nagtataka. Hindi siya veil. Kaya mag-iingat tayo next time. Blue crown tail yun. I'm sorry about this. And then, yan po. So, nakita natin na 9. And then, yung blue crown tail, 1, 2, 3. No? So, 3 po sila. And then, yung black veil tail, 1, 2, 3. And then, nag-iisa na lang yung black crown tail. No? So, yung black veil tail is 3, and then yung black crown tail is 1. So, yung kanilang phenotypic ratio is, sulat ko na lang dito sa taas. Or, burahin ko na lang din to. So, yung kanilang phenotypic ratio is 9:3, 1. Yun po yung kanilang phenotypic ratio. Sobrang haba ng proseso, pero makakaya din natin yan. Okay, so, in conclusion, please mag-iingat po kayo dun sa pagsusulat nyo ng letra at be mindful kayo dun sa mga ibinibigay nyo mga phenotypic traits. Dito sa, ayun, katulad nga nun, nagkamali ako, pero na-correct naman natin siya kagad. And then, katulad din ng sinasabi ko, maging maingat lang palagi at maging alisto kayo dito sa pagsusulat, no? Tsaka maging mindful kayo. Paulit-ulit na ako, pero ayun talaga, kailangan talaga yun. And then, like, comment, subscribe, and then leave a comment below. Yun, kung meron kayong mga questions. And then, that's all for today. And then, goodbye.